Tomb Raider, considered possibly one of the most influential action-adventure games in the 1990s. We follow the story of Lara Croft, a British archaeologist who undertakes expeditions around the world to find lost artifacts and uncover forgotten mysteries. Hey everyone, it's Caboose, and with the Shadow of the Tomb Raider coming out this year in September, we ask, should you get into the Tomb Raider Rebooted series? Originally created by core design developer Toby Gard, Lara Croft is one of the most popular female protagonists in video games, and rightfully so. Most video games at the time featured large, masculine male protagonists. Lara stood out from the crowd, countering most common stereotypical female characters. She is high-class, intelligent, athletic, and attractive. Damn! The franchise had 6 games developed by Core Design from 1996 to 2003. With the first 3 games receiving the best reviews and the 6th installment, The Angel of Darkness, receiving the worst. Crystal Dynamics rebooted the series 3 years later with Tomb Raider Legend. The game had improved graphics, tighter controls, streamlined gameplay, and changes to Lara's appearance, but still carried over exploring, acrobatic platforming, and puzzle solving, which were core elements that made the series popular. Crystal Dynamics continued on to make 2 more games, Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is a remake of the Tomb Raider 1996, and Tomb Raider Underworld in 2008. 5 years passed with only a spin-off title. People were starting to think that it was the end of Lara and her adventures. Then wham! Tomb Raider 2013. Look at the graphics, oh my god! Crystal Dynamics took the franchise in a fresh direction, now with a young, vulnerable Lara setting a more darker cinematic style and a heavy emphasis on storytelling. Lara is going for her first expedition, searching for the lost kingdom of Yamatai, getting shipwrecked while entering the Dragon's Triangle in Japan. Lara and her crew members get stranded on an isolated island. This game tries its best to immerse us, putting us in the shoes of Lara as she struggles to overcome impossible odds. It's intense, just look how much stuff she has to go through in the first half an hour of playing. Although this game received many good reviews on release, it might not be for everyone. Trying to keep it as spoiler-free as possible for those who are trying to get into the series. It's been 5 years, by the way. Let's first go over the things that this game and the sequel Rise of the Tomb Raider do well. Even by today's standards, the game looks pretty damn good and oozes style. The environment has many different high-quality textures. Water and fire act the way they should, like when holding a torch or when splashing into or walking through water. Foliage moves and leaves fall. The game doesn't have a weather cycle, but you do go through different weathers during the game, making you feel like you are on a stranded island. There are also many jaw-dropping scenic views as you play through, and don't forget about the improved hair physics. Although the color palette doesn't change that often as you progress through the game, the developers decided to keep the game gritty, staying within the theme of being a survivor. There are little details everywhere that immerse you around the world. The only thing I noticed is the in-game faces are immersive breaking. What is that? He's not even looking at where he's riding! Luckily in the sequel Rise of the Tomb Raider, they put a little more effort in facial animations. I mean, look at that! Tell me that isn't amazing! Rise of the Tomb Raider steps it up in the graphical department in general, so if you have a strong PC and love demanding graphical games, then prepare to have your eyes. You can instantly tell when a game has a lot of effort and love put into it when they pay attention to the sound. I'm glad to say that this series are those types of games. Having good sound adds depth to the game and makes it even more immersive. As Lara moves, you can hear her footsteps tread on different materials, her breathing, the wind, and the wildlife around you. The music changes from dark and scary to adventurous and heroic. The voice acting is also superbly done. If you found it hard to get into the older games because of its clunky nature, it's good to know that the whole system has been revamped. Movement is smooth and natural, Lara stays close to the ground when approaching enemies, climbing and platforming is not frustrating at all, with the camera set in predetermined places so it never goes somewhere it shouldn't. These changes definitely make it simple for new players, not having to learn the controls as much, but for veterans it might be too easy. Combat, although not special in any way, changing it up from the usual jumping and shooting is definitely welcomed. You actually physically aim with your various weapons, it's fun and snappy. My favorite is the longbow. It's silent, lethal, and shots stagger your enemy. Landing consecutive headshots on enemies feels good. It feels good. This ties in with the theme of Lara becoming stronger. becoming the amazing heroine we all know. As you go through her journey, she gains experience from hunting wildlife, defeating enemies, and finding lost artifacts. These eventually give you points that you can use to level up skills in a skill tree, making her more efficient, lethal, and tougher. Most modern games have this style of progression, but it's the first time it's been introduced to a Tomb Raider game. You also have different weapons and tools you get during the game, which you have to find parts along with salvage points to further upgrade. It's pretty basic, being only a 2-point system, but Rise of the Tomb Raider takes it a step further, making it so you have to have different materials you collect to craft and upgrade. The artifacts also enriches the storytelling as you slowly discover more and more, giving different perspectives on the matters at hand. Okay, so now that's all done and out of the way, let's look at what the game does wrong. Depending on what kind of gamer you are, some of these I didn't mind too much. They weren't game breaking, but might turn some of you off from the game. I'd like to remind everyone that no game is perfect. So the decision of making this game more cinematic I can appreciate. It gives a real sense of polish, but if you're the type of person who can't stand watching cinematics in video games, well, I got news for you. Thankfully, the action ones are transitioned well into gameplay set pieces. Although the shaky camera is used for style, it can be annoying at times, especially if Lara's just running in a straight line. And there's so many quick time events. Look, I get it, it's supposed to be intense, but they are overused. Luckily, there isn't as much in the sequel, and give more control back to the player. So, this one is also considered subjective, but I found most of the game, even set at its hardest difficulty level, wasn't very hard. I could use the bow for almost all the encounters, only using guns against enemies with shields, and arrows or ammunition can be found everywhere. It felt like the concept of struggling had to be empathized through the cutscenes, and not felt by you, the player, through gameplay. Rise of the Tomb Raider gives you a harder difficulty level, where there is no self-regen, enemies are more aware, and upgrades are more expensive. But it kinda evens out as you progress, cause Lara gets way more weapons and skills in this game, so don't expect it to be a challenging game, especially if you're good at third-person shooters. To be fair, Tomb Raider games have always been pretty linear in terms of story. The reboot doesn't change this. The first game has the island divided into different sections, and as you progress through the story, it takes you through them. It's an improvement from the older games because the transitions are done by traveling rather than continue to next level. My only beef is that there is a lack of exploration outside the one path which is given to you. There is a lot of forced combat. You have no choice but to fight. It kind of gives you the feeling of a generic AAA first-person shooter campaign where there's no deviation from the objective, and doing anything else results in you dying or it doesn't let you progress. Linearity is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it can help the game with storytelling and pacing. It definitely limits you from getting lost as much, if you're the type of person who can get frustrated with that. There are improvements though. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, they added areas that have multiple points of interest, more exploring, different ways to approach enemies, and more stealth mechanics. There is also a need to actually hunt different animals for skins, and even added side quests. All in all, the new Tomb Raider series is a good modern day style adventure game, which is really fun, and I enjoyed it. If you don't mind some of the little things, like really have to go with the story and not ask too many questions, you might have a good time. If you haven't played it yet, maybe pick up the first one in the next Steam sale. Last time it was going for $5, easily worth it at that price. If you play through the games, are you excited about Shadow of the Tomb Raider coming out this year? Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.